Well, welcome to Classic 107. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here, Claudia.
So how much do arts and culture play in municipal politics?
I'm going to turn that question round and ask how much they ought to play.
Okay.
And I want to ask the following question. Let's suppose that tomorrow somebody discovered a gold mine under Portage in Maine, and they told you that was going to make Manitobans $2 billion every year, which is about $1,500 for every Manitoban. There would be a big discussion because you're going to have to dig up Portage in Maine, but the discussion would be, how do you get the gold out? It wouldn't be whether we should do something different.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a gold mine here. It's called our creative workforce. It makes Manitoba $2 billion every year. That is $1,500 for every Winnipegger. And the problem is that this gold mine is difficult to get the value out of because it's new. We don't know how this works. We know enough about it to know that it's a driver of economic growth, that it is leading the way that the new smart economy is evolving. And we have to work out ways in which we can make the use of that 45,000 creative workers and associated workers that we have in this province that are our gold mine.
I was really surprised in my research to find out how little per capita money goes into arts and culture here in Winnipeg as compared to other cities in Canada. Why do you think that is? What are some of the other challenges that we face?
Well, I think the real problem is that you have to turn thinking round, and it's a long, slow process. People have been used to the idea that culture is a drain on the public pocket for so long. An artist and anybody who's involved in culture is just weary of saying, look, can you imagine your kids growing up without music? Do you think that you shouldn't have any time for play? Isn't there time for fun in your life? Don't you go and watch films? All the arguments about why you need culture. But the economy has changed while we were looking the other way. And what's happening now is if you look at the wider field of creativity, not just culture, so you're going to include the software industries, you're going to include advertising, you're going to include architecture, you're going to include everything that makes money out of creative talent, you realize that the real problem is not what it costs us, but what it can give to us. So I think that we are still stuck in a kind of 1950s mindset where we only think of the cost and we do not realize the benefits. And that, to me, is the fundamental problem.
Well, is there any hope in what you've seen so far in this municipal election?
Well, there's hope in the world. Let me put it that way. I don't want to be down on the municipal election, but since I started working on this in 2002, the British Department of Culture, Media and Sport, which began investing in creative industries in 1998, has basically adopted the economic system that we propose. And it has transformed London, it's transforming England. There are over 15 European countries that are invested in thinking about the creative industries instead of the cultural industries. Of course, culture's part of that, but they start from creativity. There is China is very, very strongly invested in it. Korea is the center of Singapore's policy, economic policy. It's the center of anybody that we now see as our major competitors. So at a certain point in time, if you're sitting in a backwater and being overtaken by everybody, you need to wake up to what the rest of the world is doing. Now, what I'm trying to do, and what a lot of people in Winnipeg are trying to do, is to draw attention to just how talented Winnipeggers are in spite of that deficit, and how many firsts, how many achievements we actually have to our belt if only we were prepared to be proud of it and talk about it and invest a little bit extra money in it. So I'm hopeful because, how can I put it, there's a certain point when you're so far behind, all you can do is catch up.
Part of I guess looking at municipal politics when it comes to arts and culture that we also have to keep in mind is it's not just about the city. This is something that works, as we were talking earlier, with all three levels of government.
That's the other point. I think that the federal level has been very, very conscious of the role that the arts play. The new government, and I'm not saying the previous government was unaware of the issues, but did give a real shot in the arm via the funding to Canada Arts Council and so on. I think that it was commendable that the province undertook a cultural review. And I actually agree with the criteria they set, which was return on investment. I only wish that they would take that seriously, because the evidence is mounting that you do get a return on investment for that, for creativity, and it's higher than a lot of things that they are investing in. But they're thinking about it. And to be fair, the mayor has been very forward-looking and has actually been quietly advancing the arts. The final thing I would say is this, that the little bits of spending that Manitobans for the Arts is asking for in their civic platform, they on their own don't amount for much, but the leverage is the key. What you're actually asking each Winnipegger to pay is $8 extra a year, right? Which is about 0.08% of your, it's 2 cups of Starbucks coffee or 3 if you go to Tim Hortons, right? It's not a big expense. But what you're doing is you're taking assets we already have. This is what I mean when I talk about the gold mine under Portage and Main. The assets we have are already there, and you're just leveraging them into their place to realize their full potential. And one of the key things there is the way the cities work. The modern city is in effect a creative factory. So all its places, all its event centres, everything that's already going on may not be labelled as a contribution to the arts, but are actually making the arts possible. The situation of our Aboriginal community, I mean, here's something a lot of people don't know, that APTN, the visual channel, is the top producer of Aboriginal videos in the world.
Wow.
Which is an extraordinary finding. There's a lot of firsts in this city. So even a small amount of money, because it leverages assets like that we already have, can make a huge difference. I do think that it's a tri-level effort. That the fact that the feds are doing pretty good stuff, the province is having a review, means that the three could potentially work together, provided there's a realization of the economic potential of what's going on. And that's what one hopes for. Also, I see it as a non-party issue. I think the minute one starts getting partisan about the arts, you've already lost. You have to convince everybody, you have to bring everybody along, get them patiently to see the case, the city councillors, the mayor, and all that.
What are the key areas where you think it's important, whether it's the city, the province, or the feds, to be investing in, particularly in Winnipeg?
Well, actually, I think that I wouldn't underestimate the importance of rural from the point of view of the arts. And Winnipeg also always has to be conscious of rural, because big cities act as a feeder for a lot of creativity that's going on elsewhere. And this is not only important in relation to in relation to Aboriginal art, but it's also in relation to the smaller cities, the smaller towns, which have a formidable contribution.
You're absolutely right.
We can showcase them. The key thing that a city, the key role a city plays, is what the economist Robert Caves called their gateways. That's where you bring your art and the world sees it. So you have to think of the city as a world stage. You have to think people will come here and look at what we're doing to get our stuff. So what is the stuff that we're doing that we will get people beating a path to our door to do? Well, our orchestra that I've just mentioned, APTN, the Inuit Arts Centre, there is nothing like it in the world. The Human Rights Museum, you don't normally think of that as art and culture, but heritage is part of the art, the whole cultural, the whole creativity scene as well. The oddest thing is, and I could go through, I don't want to make anybody feel the poor cousin, because I don't know if you knew this, but Winnipeg's productivity growth leads in 3 creative sectors, leads the nation. We are actually, I think it's architecture is one. I think that music and performance, we rank number 3. Film, we rank number 2. Film's bustling here, as everybody knows. We actually have these achievements to our name, and the problem is how to showcase them. Now, the three elements that are key, and they're well described in Manitobans for the Arts civic platform. I think they get it very well. It's you have to invest in the artists, that is the creative workforce. I would say more broadly than just artists. The creative workforce. You have to invest in facilities because they need places to do what they do. That's everything from galleries to performance centres to theatres. Even open spaces are actually very important for art. If you think of the number of open-air festivals that we have, you realise that those don't just happen by accident. You have to make those places possible. Traffic management counts for that as well. There's a whole series of things. It's a planning issue to get all that to fit together.
Yeah.
Permit. And the third thing is invest in events. Events are so important. The festivals, if you think of the impact that the horse show had, Cavallo was.
Oh, yes.
People love a spectacle, and a spectacle draws in the whole. You've no idea how many people from the creative workforce contribute when you have a spectacle like that. It's not just the performers, it's everything that surrounds what they're doing. So what you really need is for people to get their heads together and take a all-round view of how all this fits together, led by these three things: the creative workforce, the facilities, and the events. That is what is driving economic growth in the world, in this country, and in Manitoba. And it's, as we used to say a very long time, be there or be square.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.